Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Conflict of Nations with Ethiopia. In this episode, you'll witness victory and expansions. In this episode, we're going to review day 14 to day 20 of World War III in Ethiopia. To recap what happened in episode 3, I went to war with Egypt and Chad, and after a tough war with the two of them, I eventually managed to capture all of Egypt's territories and take most of Chad's southern territories. Today is day 14. I began my capture of Chad's last southern city and the remaining provinces. During this day, I had captured Oman's capital city and began expanding with my infantry units and seizing control of the royal palace there. While my armored unit was en route as a reinforcement, I also took over the city of Elat, which fell to insurgents due to either Egyptian Israel war, which happened earlier, which I recapped in episode 3, and you can see in episode 2. My forces had completely taken control of Egypt, and my occupational government began its rule there. Back in Chad, I sent an infantry battalion to take some of Chad's Niger territories. However, it was proven unfruitful when it was defeated by one of Chad's armored units, and he quickly regained his lost territories. In day 14, I maintained my third place position for a very long time, as you will see in future videos. Otherwise, a special statistic is I am the second most notorious nation in this game, behind Colombia and ahead of Bolivia. Just a special note, Bolivia is the third most notorious nation, even though he is inactive and hasn't conquered much territory. This is because he is a troll and he declared war on everybody in day 1. Day 15, I hadn't completely taken all of Chad's southern provinces, and the last remaining southern city because I wasn't fully active the day before. I hadn't noticed this infantry had unit snuck around, but those obstacles were quickly dealt with the help of my air force. On this day, I began researching multiple rocket launchers and attack helicopters, which I was planning to use in my campaign against Saudi Arabia. Day 16. The reinforcements arrived the day before. I managed to take the eastern Oman, and I was heading straight for Yemen. Meanwhile, I began helicopter attacks into Chad's last remaining city and sent my division to go and capture the city. The other divisions to capture the rest of his provinces. I also began planning my invasion of Libya, constructing an air base in northern Egypt, and setting up positions for my troops. I was also running out of fuel on this day, and so I asked South Africa if he could sell me some fuel. In exchange, I sold him some components. I soon noticed that Colombia was invading Mali, which I found odd. He hadn't even started invading the rest of South America. It was too strange for me, so I investigated. Colombia had a number of annexed cities, too large for it to be possible at this point in time. From what I heard, he had a large army and he was only a level 7. This was probably his second game, and he was probably just a new player. I quickly came to the conclusion that he was probably using gold, and he would later confirm it in a future episode. Boy, but that fact will hit everybody hard. Day 17. I had reached the capital of Yemen and had the southern border of the Arabian Peninsula under my control, which was a stepping stone in my preparation for war against Saudi Arabia. I had almost completely, fully captured Chad's territory, while I sent up my troops into positions to invade Libya. Iran declared war on me, but he was just another AI state. Nothing to worry about, and he made peace with me a few days later. Hey guys, if you're still watching, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. I know I'm not consistent, but making these videos takes a lot of sacrifice, especially with my time and energy. And doing that small gesture does nothing but make my videos better. On that note, please send comments giving me feedback on my videos. There are a lot of things I would like to try out on both of my YouTube channels in the future, and I would really appreciate the support. Day 18. I didn't do much but continue my preparations for my waiting war of Libya before doing a threat assessment analysis. This is an analysis that I've learned to do thanks to my experience in conflict of nations. And if you guys are interested, I might do an in-depth video on how to do one. Put your comments down below if you are interested in it. But for the basics, in my experience playing Conflict of Nations, I've learnt about the behavior of players based on the rate of expansion, size, position, and skill level of their coalition. But, long story short, coalitions that expand aggressively to the point they become the biggest tend to be disliked by smaller coalitions or nations, especially if one of their members, or worst of all, their leader, is rude or unfair to other players. Once another nation or coalition is threatened by their expansion, especially if they border them, they'll form some kind of a temporary treaty as a temporary measure to delay an inevitable war, using that time to conspire against that coalition or player by working with other smaller coalitions or nations, or finding a traitor within their coalition they can use to conspire against them. I may be wrong, but almost all my games have ended up like this. Sometimes me being the hated one. With my analysis, I determined Colombia's coalition to be the threat and Japan's coalition to be a potential ally. We both border the Colombian coalition. However, we don't border each other. And Colombia's diplomatic relations are worsening because he has been spending an unbelievable amount of gold. And you will see why in the future. You'll actually be surprised, speaking from the future. Day 19. I started off by reading the news as Colombia began to call out Austria and the European coalition for losing their dominance, while continuing to advertise their dominance. Him and his coalition are quickly catching up. Colombia would later offer positions in his coalition to South Africa and I to join. However, these slots were later lost to New Zealand, surprise, Austria, and Ukraine. So we didn't end up joining. I began my campaign against Libya with ship bombardments on its capital, Tripoli, and then attack helicopter strikes deep into his territory. My troops marched into his homeland territories to take his cities. I soon realized my eastern Egyptian air base was vulnerable. So I didn't want to lose my air force, so I sent my troops in Yemen to Egypt, thanks to the airstrip I set up there. I also started constructing a level 2 base to mobilize my attack helicopters to fight against the armored targets in Saudi Arabia. But while that was being built, I started off mobilizing drones. Day 20, the war with Libya was going well. After having cleared many of his cities, my troops came in to capture them. I wanted to take Libya as quickly as possible so that I could move on to Saudi Arabia and then Turkey. I sent my troops to quickly take Libya's provinces as well. I also got my first drone and sent it over Saudi Arabia to collect more intelligence. I also started mobilizing anti aircraft guns and SAMs as well. Because in the case of a war against Colombia's coalition, I was going to need to prepare for a confrontation against fighter jets and helicopters. I also decided to mobilize the radar to improve range and the ability for my radar to be airlifted. I began to send my newly mobilized troops to Yemen and Oman along the border with the Saudis. I also sent my agents to the Saudis and the Turkish. Intelligence can sometimes make the difference between a defeat and a historic victory. Colombia continued to expand in Africa, which made South Africa and I uncomfortable. South Africa more than I was. So I asked him to stop expanding in Africa, and he did listen. However, he annexed one of the cities there, and that was something I noticed about Colombia. Throughout the coming days, he was going to continue using gold to annex cities and drastically scale up his army. And this is his first game. Can you believe it? Well, more or less his second game because of the tutorial game that those people have to play. He's a very inexperienced player, and it will show. His expansion into Africa will become a growing point of tension between our coalitions in the future. Well, guys, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did watch this till the end, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. As you already know, every like and subscription does nothing but make these videos better. See you in episode 5, Rising Tensions.